I'm hoping Mark Meadows will use his words. He is the White House Chief of Staff and maybe the MVP of that current White House, and currently one of the few without the coronavirus. First off, on the president, Mark Meadows, the word is going into today, he had no COVID-19 symptoms. What about him? What about you?
Yeah, he's doing real well. We actually spent some time together yesterday working very hard from the residence, and I can tell you that he's fully engaged and feeling great. You know, his heart continues to go out to the millions of Americans who have struggled with this virus, having not only gotten it, but having gotten treatment from the great folks at Walter Reed. I continue to test negative, but at the same time, we know this virus has a way of reaching out and getting people when they least expect it. And so the president is already been on the phone this morning talking to Secretary Mnuchin. The secretary and I have been talking about what we could do with standalone bills to help airlines, small businesses, and the American people with stimulus checks. So hopefully we can convince Speaker Pelosi to do something on a standalone basis.
Well, since you mentioned that, Nancy Pelosi was apparently on a phone call yesterday, and there's a quote from Bloomberg News that says Pelosi earlier told House Democrats on a conference call that Trump's thinking might be affected by the steroids he's taken to treat his coronavirus infection, according to a lawmaker on the call. So, Mark, Nancy Pelosi is suggesting that the president is making some crazy decisions because it's like roid rage.
Well, Speaker Pelosi continues to throw out all kinds of reasons for the failure on the negotiations, other than looking in the mirror, because we know that consistently she's been at the 2.2 to 2.4 trillion, depending on what day you talk to her. She's failed to budge. She's not negotiating in good faith, and a number of us yesterday were on a call with the president as we looked at the progress that had been made, or I might say that had not been made, and the president felt like it was better to be transparent with the American people on the prognosis of whether we would be able to get it. He's still fully engaged. I will say this: Secretary Mnuchin and the president have offered 1.6 trillion. Willing to look at they were willing to look at a little bit more than that because they had given money for schools, they'd given money for small businesses, money for child care, money really for the airlines and a number of the other places that are hurting right now, and she continues to say that it's not enough. And so she'd rather spend zero than $1.6 trillion, and I don't know that the American people will accept that.
I know that Stephen Miller tested positive. He's a speechwriter and one of Trump's senior advisors. What precautions is the White House putting in place now?
Yeah, we've actually had a number of precautions in place. Obviously, with Stephen Miller, we knew that he had a potential exposure. He's actually been working from home since that time, and we've actually been testing him each and every day to make sure that when he turned positive, we would know that, just because he had very close contact with Hope Hicks. And so as the news came out yesterday, we kind of had anticipated that. The good news is the contact tracing for him was really zero because he hadn't been in contact with anybody in the West Wing. We've actually also done some additional protocols in terms of cordoning off different working groups to try to not only stop it, but also understand how we can put in additional protocols to make sure people are safe.
Mark, as you know, when you come out in business hours and with the tweet the president came out with, it tanked the market. I think it lost 400 points. And this an hour before, the Fed Chair Jerome Powell says he warned failing to inject more federal help into the economy would risk weakening the tenuous recovery. Country needs stimulus checks, many people would say, that you want to give. Having said that, being that the Fed's saying that, he's not saying Republicans or Democrats. It's to the president's advantage and the country's need to get something in there. Why can't you work something out, being that Steve Mnuchin had 2 long meetings yesterday? Did he come back, throw up his hands and tell the president, do me a favor and tweet? Did you ask the president to tweet? Could you bring us inside that process?
Well, I'll bring you inside the process. I think I was sharing that we actually had a phone call there. We can continue to have conversations that don't lead anywhere. Brian, and when you do that, we were on with Leader McCarthy, Leader McConnell, the president, myself, and as we were talking about the progress there, the numbers they were talking about are just incredibly high in terms of bailouts for states, blue-run states. The numbers they're suggesting are much higher than what the real need is. Additionally, when we look at, there was a bipartisan proposal that put out by the problem solvers. Almost at every turn, the proposal that the president put forth was actually better than that proposal. You know, there comes a point where you understand that the other side is just playing politics. The real thing is Speaker Pelosi didn't want those checks to go out to the American people before November 3rd. She felt like it would help the president, and so she's been negotiating in that manner.
Right.
And so, you know, we're still willing to be engaged, but I'm not optimistic for a comprehensive deal. I am optimistic that there's about 10 things that we could do on a piecemeal basis if the Speaker is willing to put it before her members.
One of the other tweets from the president, I think it was in the 6 or 7 o'clock hour, Mr. Meadows, was the president announced that the declassified documents from Mr. Brennan, formerly at the CIA, and others had been released last night. And essentially what it looks like, the note from CIA Director Brennan looks like Hillary Clinton and their campaign ordered a campaign plan to stir up a scandal by linking Trump to Russia in 2016 to deflect from her private email server that, you know, everybody was afraid was not secure enough. This goes back to your days in Congress. Nobody knows more about this than you. This is not surprising.
Well, it's not surprising to me, but it is surprising to the American people when you see Brennan's notes. And one of the things he puts in there is to vilify Donald Trump. I mean, when you look at a coordinated effort and now you see it in his own handwriting, why is this just now coming out to the American people? Why, after $45 million, did Mueller not put any of this in his report to say there could have been a different narrative? There are more documents to come. The president wants transparency on all of this, and hopefully we'll see documents in the coming days.
What did Dan Coates do for two or 3 years?
Well, obviously, Dan Coates did not allow these documents to come out. I want to applaud Director Ratcliffe and his willingness, and Director Grinnell before him, in terms of trying to make sure that the American people understand the truth. The president's been saying it from day one. Now, all of a sudden, we have the documents to support it.
The only problem is the other networks are not covering it. NBC, ABC, and CBS didn't cover it on their nightly newscasts. So,
well, that's not a surprise. That's not a surprise.
But it's such a big story. The American public needs to know this. All right. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's good
You're
to be
welcome.
with you.
Good to see you.